In this video essay, I'm strictly going through basically an IMAX preview which showed the first 10 minutes as well as a harvester scene. In this essay, I will just cover the first 10 minutes. I will just do a strict description, basically a kind of skeletal form of those 10 minutes. So if you don't want any spoilers whatsoever, do not listen. If you're okay with that, then we will proceed very soon. And that's it. We're just going to go through the first 10 minutes. All right, spoiler warning, let's get to it. Well, we begin with Dune Part 1. That will be the title. Immediately we get narration from Shani, played by Zendaya, and she's doing a voiceover. We're on Arrakis, and apparently a battle is occurring between Harkonnen soldiers and the Fremen. She's doing the narration as Shani. She ends with a kind of line about who will oppress us next. We get some shots of Harkonnen ships in space, which look very impressive and look very, very real. And then we move on to House Atreides. We follow Paul, who is getting up, and it seems like he's going to do basically his daily routine. He meets the Lady Jessica, who is his mother, and Jessica immediately asks him to try to do the voice on her. Now, again, this is going to be strictly a very skeletal description, but apparently they're doing something very, very weird with the voiceover, something very, very unique. And essentially we hear Paul's voice and essentially tries to command Lady Jessica to pass him water. Jessica seems to be about to obey, but basically breaks out of it and says, "Nice try, essentially. You got to do more training," but is congratulatory. Paul acknowledges this and moves on. Then we see Paul doing some studying of Arrakis proper, and he's looking at wind patterns. This apparently matches the books. And then we see that House Atreides is going to get ready for a big formal ceremony. Now, if you've seen the trailer, you've seen little bits and pieces of this. So they line up. They're all in very formal wear. I think this is where the joke comes in that Duke Leto turns to Gurney to smile. They receive an envoy from the Emperor. This envoy, who is black, asks them, are they willing to take on essentially Arrakis as a kind of honor, and Duke Leto answers that House Atreides has always been ready. The soldiers of House Atreides scream in the background in unison, and they receive basically the envoy and the commanding of Arrakis. They say they're going to bring sort of something like peace to Arrakis, and so on and so forth. This has all been prepared. They know what's going to happen, but they have to go through this whole formal ceremony. During this sequence, we see one of the Mentats going through one of their mental calculations, and apparently there's something in terms of special effects where we see their eyes and they go white, and something weird occurs with their eyes because we see their mental calculation. We also see some of the Bene Gesserit. A Bene Gesserit witch is essentially around, and Jessica and her spot one another, and they seem to give each other kind of like a weird look. Either they're mind reading one another or just sizing one another up. And during this whole thing, we do see a small snippet of Paul having a vision, because we see the Lady Jessica with tattoos on her face, which seems to be a big jump in time. And she has blue eyes, which can't be possible unless they are already on Arrakis for a while. So presumably this is a snippet of Paul's powers. He also meets Duncan Idaho briefly, and they have a short exchange. And in this case, Duncan is played by Jason Momoa. This version of Duncan is much more lighthearted. He's not as harsh and kind of about business all the time. He's much more casual with Paul, and they seem much more friendly. So that's the essentials. We basically get Arrakis. We get some Harkonnen soldiers. Again, we're getting a lot. We're getting a Bene Gesserit witch. We're getting a Mentat. We're getting Duke Leto. They're in uniforms. We're getting Paul doing his daily routine, and even some of his powers, which again, apparently were very unique in terms of sound design. But there are some things that are really missing. So although we see Shani, we don't see Stilgar at all. So there's no shots of Stilgar. We do see a Mentat. We see a witch. We don't see the Emperor. We just see the envoy of the Emperor. So we don't see the princess or the Emperor, and the princess's voiceover that usually began the book as well as the movie is totally gone, so that will not be occurring in the first 10 minutes. Maybe they will show up later, maybe they will make cameos, but they are apparently not or in the first 10 minutes. And again, despite it sounding very dry and boring, we do see a battle scene early on, and apparently it's incredibly intense as the Fremen show off some very sophisticated weapons that apparently they disintegrate some Harkonian soldiers. So these weapons are very powerful. They look basically like fireworks, but they disintegrate people. So it's a very intense battle. It's very, very short, but it's showing a promise that there's going to be a lot of action. So don't be worried if this feels a little dry or just setting up the world building. There is some action that occurs very early on. And that is the first 10 minutes of Dune. There's obviously a lot more details, and a lot more things occurring within the scenes and characters. I just want to give people a very brief structural overlook, and as you can see, a lot is happening, and it looks fantastic. I'll get into a much more detailed visual analysis and thematic analysis. I just want to give people a heads up in terms of, because obviously some people have heard of this, like, well, what is this preview exactly of? It's essentially an IMAX showing the first 10 minutes. They're also showing a bonus scene of a harvester scene later on that happens in the movie. We also get some information from Denis as well as Hans Zimmer, who's the composer, and I'll get to that in a future set of essays. All right, this has been an overlook at the IMAX sneak preview of Dune, the first 10 minutes. Thank you for listening.